No one at the airport noticed anything unusual that December afternoon. Passengers carried suitcases, families embraced upon arrival. Vendors offered coffee and magazines. Everything seemed normal. But in the security checkpoint, something was about to break. A man in a dark suit held the hand of a little girl, barely 7 years old. He walked in silence, his gaze fixed on the ground, his shoulders tense as if carrying an invisible weight. Don't cry, don't speak, just breathe. And that, only that, was what caught the attention of the only person in that entire place capable of reading what he had never seen before. Max was an 8-year-old German Shepherd trained in narcotics detection and tracking. He worked at this airport for 4 years with his handler, Officer Ramirez, a man named but deeply attached to his canine partner. Max wasn't just a service dog. He was a machine of finely tuned instincts capable of detecting fear, adrenaline, guilt, and something far darker than any drug: the silent terror of a child in danger. That afternoon, while patrolling the security cordon, Max stopped dead in his tracks. His ears perked up, his spine stiffened, and his body tensed like a spring about to spring. Ramirez noticed it immediately. He knew his partner's every signal. Max never acted without reason. The officer followed the dog's gaze and saw the little girl. At first glance, there was nothing alarming. Just a small girl with brown hair, wearing a pink sweater, walking beside a man who appeared to be her priest. But Max didn't look at the man. He looked at her. And she, for a fleeting moment, looked up and met the dog's gaze. It was a second, less than that. But in that exchange of glances, something strange. Something Ramirez couldn't see, but felt in his gut. The girl quickly looked away, as if she'd never been allowed to look at him. The man squeezed her hand tighter and smiled at the agents with that forced cordiality the security experts had learned to recognize. Max growled softly. It wasn't an aggressive growl. It was a warning, a direct message to his contact. Something's not right here. Ramirez took a deep breath. She couldn't detain someone alone because the dog was so alert. It took more, but she trusted Max more than any protocol. So she approached calmly, smiling, and addressed the man in a friendly voice. "Good afternoon, sir. Routine check. Could you show me your documents and the girls?" The man remained motionless, still smiling, and took the passports out of his suitcase. Ramirez checked them. Everything seemed to be in order. Daniel Ortega, 40 years old. Sofia Ortega, 7 years old. Mexican passports. Tickets to Cancun. Nothing suspicious about the papers. But Max kept staring at the girl, and she, though her head was bowed, moved her hand to the right. It was an almost imperceptible gesture. She ran her fingers across the palm of her other hand 3 times, in a slow, deliberate pattern. Ramirez didn't see me. Focus on the documents. But Max did see it. Though he didn't know what that gesture meant, he knew it was intentional. He knew it was a silent scream. The dog took 2 steps toward the girl, ignoring the unspoken command to stay by Ramirez's side. The man stepped back slightly, his smile wavering for the first time. "Hey, officer, is your dog okay?" Ramirez touched the ceiling and called for Max, but the dog didn't move. He stood in front of the girl, staring at her, ears still and back completely motionless. It was a posture Ramirez knew well. Max had found something. But it wasn't drugs. It wasn't an explosive. It was something human, something broken. "Sir, may I ask the girl a few questions?" Ramirez asked, his tone casual but firm. The man paused, his jaw tightening for a moment, but he regained his composure. "Of course, officer, although she's very shy. Her mother passed away a few months ago. We're going to the beach to let off steam." His voice was soft, rehearsed, perfect, too perfect. Ramirez stood up and crouched down to the girl's eye level. "Hello, Sofia. My name is Ramirez. Are you okay?" The girl didn't answer. Her eyes remained fixed on the ground. Ramirez waited. The silence stretched uncomfortably. The man cleared his throat. "Like I said, you're very shy." But then Max heard something Ramirez never expected. The dog moved closer to the girl and gently pressed her hand against his. It wasn't aggressive, it was tender, as if to say, "I saw you. I'm afraid you're scared. You're not alone." And the girl reacted. For the first time, I raised my head. Her eyes met Max's. In that look, Ramirez saw everything. I saw fear, I saw pleading, I saw desperation. The girl spat and, very quickly, made that gesture with her hand again. 3 taps on her palm. Ramirez didn't understand what it meant, but I guessed at that moment that something was terribly wrong. Instinct screams. Max had found something. I'm not going to let go of this case. "Mr. Ortega, could you come with me for a moment? Just a couple more questions in the workshop." Ramirez's tone changed. It was no longer casual. It was an order disguised as a request. The man pressed his lips together. "Is it really necessary? Our flight leaves in 40 minutes." Ramirez nodded. "I won't be long. It's standard procedure." The man looked around, calculating. I finally did, but I didn't let go of the girl's hand. "She's coming with me." Ramirez didn't reply. "Of course." They walked to a small side workshop, followed by Max, who didn't leave the girl's side for an inch. Inside, Ramirez discreetly requested resources over the radio. Something in the till, and they needed time to investigate. While I waited, I kept asking questions. "What do you do for a living, Mr. Ortega?" "I'm a financial consultant." "Where do you live?" "In Monterey." "Does the girl go to school?" "Yes, of course, it's second nature to me." All correct answers, all perfectly reasonable. But Max kept grumbling softly every time the man spoke. Then I reached Officer Mendez, a 30-year-old woman specializing in child abuse victims. Ramirez had sent a coded message. She came in with a warm smile and went straight to the girl. "Hello, sweetheart. May I ask you a few questions while your father speaks with my partner?" The man stiffened. He doesn't usually talk to strangers. Mendez was understanding. "I understand, but it's just a formality. I won't be long." Before the man could protest further, Mendez gently took the girl's hand and the guide led them to another room. Max followed them unprompted. The man tried to stand, but Ramirez held him firmly. "Sir, please sit down. It will only be a few minutes." The tension in the workshop was palpable. The man was breathing heavily. His gaze shifted toward the door through which the girl had disappeared. And Ramirez knew, with absolute certainty, that Max had been right all along. In another room, Mendez sat across from the little girl, Max at his feet, still keeping a watchful eye. "Sophia, don't feel sorry for yourself. Are you okay? I just want to make sure you're safe." The little girl didn't answer, but her eyes were filled with tears. Mendez waited. He knew holding back was useless. He had to let the little girl speak when it was her turn. Minutes passed in silence. Then, in a barely audible voice, the little girl whispered, "That's not my dad." The words landed like a bomb in the room. Mendez remained calm, though his heart was pounding. "Who is he, Sophia?" The girl spat out saliva, tears now streaming freely down her cheeks. "I didn't see him. I thought about it 3 days ago. I said if he talked to anyone, he'd kill my mom." Mendez felt a chill. He looked at Max, who had raised his head, as if he too understood the gravity of the moment. "Where are you, Mommy, Sophia?" the girl sobbed. "In Guadalajara. He was my teacher at school. I said he was my mom's friend. I didn't know." Mendez immediately activated his radio. "Code red. Possible kidnapping. I need you to arrest the man in Workshop 3, now." In seconds, the workshop where the man was located was swarming with police officers. Ramirez arrested his wife without giving her time to react. The man screamed, protested, demanded to speak with a lawyer. But it didn't matter. The truth had come out. And all thanks to a dog who had seen what I could never see. The following hours were a whirlwind. They contacted the authorities in Guadalajara. Sofia's mother, a woman named Patricia, was desperately searching for her. She reported the disappearance immediately, but the man used forged documents to take the girl out of the city. The plan was to take her to Cancun and then to another country, where they would sell her. Sofia was one of the lucky ones. She was found a long time ago, all because a dog trusted its instincts and an officer trusted his dog. When Patricia arrived at the airport that same night, she ran to her daughter, crying out. Sofia threw herself into her arms, sobbing uncontrollably, clinging to her as if she feared someone would snatch her away again. Ramirez and Mendez watched the scene, their eyes welling with tears. Max sat beside them, slowly stirring the glue, as if he knew he had something important in his hands. Patricia approached them after a long while, still holding her daughter. "Thank you. Thank you for saving her. I don't know how to thank you." Her voice broke. Ramirez put his hands to his head. "It wasn't me, it was him," he said, pointing at Max. Patricia looked at the dog with eyes full of gratitude and wonder. She went over to Max and hugged him tightly. The dog hugged her back, calm and serious, as if he fully understood what was happening. Sofia, still in her mother's arms, reached out and gently stroked Max's head. "Thank you, little pup," she whispered, her voice trembling. And Max, for the first time all afternoon, vigorously moved the glue, letting out a small, soft whimper. It was his way of saying, "You're welcome, little one. I was just doing my job." But the story doesn't end there. Days later, it was discovered that the man was part of a childcare network operating in several states. His arrest sparked a wider investigation that rescued other children in similar situations. Max became a national hero. The news media picked up the story. Airport security footage showing Max stopping in front of the girl and remaining still went viral. Millions of people were moved and shared it. Comments from across the country flooded social media. "Dogs know. Animals come from what we don't see. This dog saved a life." And I had my reasons. Max had saved a life, but on Sofia's land. I also saved all the children who were found thanks to this investigation. He had become a symbol of something bigger, the capacity of animals to connect with human suffering in ways we still don't fully understand. Ramirez received praise and recognition, but I was always clear in my statements. I only followed my partner. He was what I saw that I couldn't see. He was the one I refused to go with that girl. Max is the real hero here. But to fully understand what happened at that airport, we must understand who Max was. He wasn't just any dog. His story began years earlier at a shelter in Mexico City, where he arrived as an abandoned dog. He was small, timid, and scared. No one wanted him. He spent months in a cage, like other dogs who were adopted, while he was left behind. But one day, Ramirez came into the shelter looking for a partner. I was trained to train police officers and knew how to recognize potential when I saw it. I saw it in Max. Not because he was the strongest or the biggest. It's significant because when Ramirez crouched down in front of his cage, Max looked him straight in the eyes. In that gaze, Ramirez saw something: intelligence, loyalty, and a compelling need for purpose. Ramirez adopted Max that same day. He began his training from scratch. It wasn't easy. Max was insecure, frightened by loud noises, and nervous around strangers. But Ramirez was patient. He taught me to trust. He taught me to obey. He taught me to use his instincts to help others. And Max learned. In the field, I learned basic commands and detection techniques. I learned something much deeper. I learned to read fear. I learned to sense when someone was in danger. I learned that my life now had a purpose, and that purpose was to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. For 4 years, Max and Ramirez worked together at the airport. They found drugs, weapons, illegal money. But they had never encountered anything like this.
They had never found a child in danger. When Max saw Sophia, something inside him was triggered. In his training ground, something more primal, something instinctive. He saw in her what he had once been, a helpless, frightened being, silently pleading for help. In that moment, Max knew he couldn't speak. He couldn't let her go. So he didn't hide it. He stood in front of her and refused to move until someone understood. Months passed. Sophia returned to her mother's life. But the trauma didn't disappear overnight. Patricia took her to therapy. Sophia began to talk about what she had experienced. The constant fear, the comforts, the nights crying silently, believing she would never see her mother again. But she also spoke of a moment of hope. A moment when she saw a dog at the airport and felt, for the first time in days, that someone saw it. Someone knew it was in danger. Yes, someone didn't abandon her. Patricia decided that Sophia had to see Max again.
She needed to close that chapter of her life with gratitude, albeit with fear. So she contacted Ramirez and asked if she could visit him. Ramirez agreed immediately. The meeting was arranged at the airport in a private room away from the crowds. When Sophia entered, Max was sitting next to Ramirez, on alert. But upon seeing the little girl, his demeanor changed. As he stood up, his tail began to wag, and he walked with slow, cautious steps as if he knew he was still fragile. Sophia threw herself in front of him, her eyes brimming with tears. "Hi, Max," I whispered. The dog came over and hugged her tightly against her cheek, wanting her to hug him back. Sophia cried, but this time they weren't tears of fear. They were tears of relief, of gratitude, of love for an animal that had changed her fate. "Thank you for not leaving me," she sobbed. And Max, in his infinite canine wisdom, simply stayed there, letting the little girl hold on to him for as long as she needed. Patricia also approached, reverently stroking Max. "I didn't know what you were doing, my friend. I didn't know how you knew. But you saved my daughter. You saved my family." Ramirez smiled, his eyes moist. "He does it better, seeing what others don't see, hearing what others don't hear, feeling what others ignore." Patricia remained silent, still stroking the dog. "You're an angel." Ramirez gazed at his companion, his best friend, the animal that had been chased away and abandoned, but had found its purpose saving lives. "Yes," I said softly, "he is." But Max's story still had more chapters to be written. His heroism at the airport made him a public figure. Schools invited him to speak about safety. The media followed him. Even the federal government recognized his work with a Medal of Honor. But none of that really mattered to Max. He continued doing what he always did, working with Ramirez, patrolling the airport, detecting dangers. Only now, every time he saw a child, he paused for a second longer. He looked more closely. Because he had learned that sometimes the loudest cries are the ones heard in silence. Sophia, for her part, began to heal. Therapy helps. Her mother's love helped her. But there was something more than help. Knowing that Max existed. Knowing that there were animals in the world that protected children. That saw when no one else did. That's what I call hope. I felt that the world, although sometimes dark and frightening, also had bright lights. And one of those lights had 4 legs, a black hoof, and a heart bigger than any human being could comprehend. Over time, Sophia began to write. It was her way of processing what she had experienced. "Tell your mom about it," she would draw. She would draw your house. She would draw the airport. And always, in every drawing, there was a dog. A German shepherd with deep eyes and alert ears. A dog that protected her from danger. A dog that never left her alone. Patricia kept each of those drawings like a treasure. It was proof that her wife was recovering, that the trauma hadn't destroyed her, that she could still see goodness in the world. 2 years after the rescue, Patricia organized a small party to celebrate Sophia's New Year. She invited the whole family, her school friends, her old friends. But there was one special invitation she had sent weeks before, for Ramirez and Max. When they arrived, the party was delayed. All the children ran toward Max, excited to see the famous hero dog. Max, patient as always, no longer petted her. He played with her, talked to her. But his gaze was searching for someone. When he found her, his eyes moved with intensity. Sophia approached shyly, still a little nervous in the crowd, but smiling. "Hi, Max," I said in a clear, firm voice. So different from the terrified little girl we knew years ago. Max came over to her, and Sophia hugged him tightly. "I missed you." The dog let out a small whimper of happiness, wagging his tail enthusiastically. Ramirez watched the scene with a smile. Seeing Sophia like this, happy, surrounded by love, knowing that Max had been a part of it, was the greatest reward he could have hoped for. During the party, Patricia gave Ramirez a gift. It was a painting, a portrait of Max, painted by a local artist, based on Sophia's drawings. In the painting, Max sat alert, his gaze fixed straight ahead, protective and noble. In the lower corner, there was an inscription that read, "For Max, who saw him unseen and saved him pricelessly. With eternal love, Sophia and Patricia." Ramirez felt a lump in his throat. "I don't know what to decide," he murmured. Patricia smiled. "We don't have to decide anything. We just want you to know that we will never forget what's wrong. What's wrong?" Ramirez placed the plaque in his home in a place of honor. Every time he looked at it, he remembered why he chose this job, why he trained Max. Why every difficult day, every dangerous situation, every moment of doubt was worth it. Because somewhere, a little girl was alive, happy, surrounded by love. Because a dog refused to ignore her suffering. And that, more than any medal of recognition, was what truly mattered. The years passed. Max grew old. His coat became matted with reeds. His movements slowed. But his instincts never wavered. He kept working until his body could do no more. Ramirez made the difficult decision to retire him from active duty. It was a bittersweet day. The airport held a farewell ceremony. Officers, colleagues, including some airport workers who had known Max for years, came to say goodbye. There were tears, hugs, and shared stories. But at the end, there was a surprise. Patricia and Sophia appeared. Sophia, now older, tall, and self-assured, approached Max with a huge smile. "We couldn't let you go without saying goodbye," she said. Max, even older and tired, moved his arm with real strength. Sophia went over and hugged him, whispering in his ear, "You were my hero. You always will be." At that moment, everyone present understood that the bond between this girl and this dog was something that transcended time, space, and even logic. It was something pure, something sacred. Max spent his last years at Ramirez's house, sleeping in the sun, playing quietly with the older children, and enjoying his well-deserved rest. Sophia visited him often. She brought chickens for the dogs, read him books, and told him stories from her life. Max listened, his head resting on his legs, his eyes tired but happy. Although he no longer patrolled airports or detected dangers, he continued to fulfill his purpose. He continued to protect. He continued to love. He continued to be the hero he had always been. When Max closed his eyes for the last time, Ramirez was by his side, stroking him, thanking him for his years of loyalty, courage, and unconditional love. With his last breath, Ramirez swore that Max had dreamed. "How did you know your life mattered? How did you know everything I came to this world to do had a purpose?" The news of his death hit Sophia like a blow to the heart. She cried for days, but she also smiled because she knew Max had lived an extraordinary life. He had been loved. He had been valued. He had saved lives. And he died knowing he was a hero. Max's funeral was small but very moving. Ramirez, Patricia, Sophia, and some friends from the area gathered in the small garden where I was buried.
Sophia read a letter that said, "Dear Max, if dogs are in heaven, but if there's a place for four-legged angels, then you're there. Thank you for watching over me when I never left. Thank you for not letting me go. Thank you for teaching me that there is always light, even in the darkest moments. I will love you forever." I couldn't hold back the tears in that garden. They placed a simple but beautiful headstone. Max, hero, companion, savior. He saw the invisible. We saved him. Priceless. Rest in peace. And next to the headstone, they planted a tree, a young oak that would grow strong and protective, just as Max had been. Sophia promised to take care of it, visit it, and always remember the dog who gave her back her life. Months passed. Life went on. But Max's story was not forgotten. It became a legend. It was taught in schools. In police academies, his case was studied as an example of instinct and loyalty. On the internet, his story continued to be shared, inspiring millions. And in the heart of a girl, now a woman, Max lived forever as the angel who saved her life with nothing but pure instinct and a courageous heart. Ramirez never trained another dog. Max had been unique, irreplaceable. But he continued his work at the airport, now as the supervisor of the canine unit. And every time he saw a new handler with their partner, they would tell him Max's story. He would say, "Trust our dogs. They are what we cannot see. They sense things we cannot sense. Sometimes, just sometimes, we can save a life simply by refusing to look elsewhere." The new agents listened, absorbing every word, understanding that their job was more than detecting drugs or weapons. It was protecting the vulnerable. It was being the voice of those who couldn't speak. It was being, like Max had been, a silent guardian in a noisy world. Today, years later, Sophia is a young adult. She studied veterinary medicine. She wants to dedicate her life to caring for animals, especially service dogs. She says this is her way of honoring Max, of giving back to the world a little of what Max hated. When asked why she chose this career, she smiles and tells the story. The story of a day at an airport, of a dog that refused to move, of a silent signal that only she could understand, and how that simple connection between an animal and a girl changed everything. Because ultimately, that's what Max taught us, that empathy doesn't need words. That love knows no boundaries between species. That a brave heart can manifest itself in any way. And that, sometimes, just sometimes, true heroes have 4 legs and a purer soul than any of us could ever dream of. Max's teachings live on in every service dog he works with today. In every life they save, in every danger they detect. And, above all, they live on in Sophia, who will never forget the dog who saw her silent pain and decided it was worth it, that she deserved to be saved, that her life mattered. This is the deepest truth of this whole story. Max, from the ground, saved a little girl. He saved the faith of all those who know his story, a faith that extraordinary beings still exist in this world. Beings who, regardless of their form, act with courage, love, and purpose. Max was one of those beings. Although you are no longer physically here, your spirit, your legacy, your love remain. In the tree that grows on your grave? In the heart of the woman who saved you. In the stories told about you. And in every dog that, at this very moment, is somewhere in the world, reaching where others cannot, protecting those who cannot protect themselves, being silent heroes in a world that desperately needs them. As Sophia progressed in her veterinary studies, something unexpected began to happen. Max's story inspired so many people that specialized training programs for animal abuse detection dogs began to emerge. What Max knew instinctively was becoming a formal protocol. Organizations across the country contacted Ramirez to share her experience, explain how Max had detected Sophia, and what signals he had shown the dog that should be replicated in the training of other animals.
Ramirez accepted every invitation. He traveled to Mexico City, Guadalajara, Tijuana, and Monterrey. In each place, he told the whole story. Back on solid ground, the moment at the airport encapsulates Max's life. His abandonment, his rescue, his training, his years of service, and finally, that crucial day when an ancestral instinct compelled him to plant his paws in front of a little girl and refuse to move. The trainers listened, fascinated, taking notes and asking questions. How does one get to that point? How do you teach a dog to detect silent terror? The truth, Ramirez explained, is that it can't be fully learned. You can train a dog to detect specific smells associated with fear, cortisol, adrenaline, stress pheromones. You can train it to recognize the body language of distress, slumped shoulders, eyes on the ground, shallow breathing, restricted movements. But what Max had, and what he had when he stopped in front of Sophia and didn't move, was something else entirely. It was pure empathy. It was a spiritual connection. It was a gift that not all dogs could possess, no matter how long they were trained. But then the programs moved forward. Specialized units were created at airports, bus stations, and borders. Dogs were specifically trained to detect animal victims, especially children. And it worked. In the first year after the implementation of these programs, 4 and 3 children were rescued in situations similar to Sophia's. 4 and 3 lives were saved thanks to a dog named Max who showed them the way. 4 and 3 families reunited. 4 and 3 children who could sleep peacefully again. Every time Ramirez received news of another successful rescue, he would call Patricia and Sophia to tell them. And every time, Sophia would shout with joy and gratitude, knowing that her story, her pain, was now helping to save others. That Max, on dry land, had saved her, but that his legacy was saving teachers, preparing them to be vigilant, perhaps one day for thousands of older children. It was as if Max continued working, even after death, protecting the vulnerable from wherever he was. But Sophia had her own demons too. Despite therapy, despite her mother's love, despite knowing she was safe, there were nights when the nightmares returned. That night, she found herself back in that car, with the man who wasn't her priest, hearing threats, feeling utter terror. She woke up, sweating, crying, screaming. Patricia rushed to her room, hugged her, and reminded her she was safe. But the scars of that trauma ran deep, and healing took time, a long time. During one of those particularly difficult nights, when Sophia was 4 years old, Patricia made a decision to call Ramirez. "It's a lot to ask," I said, my voice trembling, "but Sophia is struggling. The nightmares are worse than ever. She's in therapy, she's doing everything she can for herself, but she needs something more. She needs to feel safe. And even though Max isn't around, I think maybe you know another dog, one who could help her." Ramirez was silent for a moment. He knew exactly what the perfect dog was. "Give me 2 days," he finally said. "I think I have someone who can help." And he hung up with an idea forming in his mind. There was a dog in the canine unit, one that had been rejected 3 times for being too sensitive for police work. A golden retriever named Luna, who had a special gift. She could sense when someone was distressed and wouldn't leave that person's side until they calmed down. She was perfect for therapy, but Ramirez's superiors wanted a more aggressive, more intimidating dog. Ramirez was fighting to keep her in the program, but he was losing the battle. An opportunity presented itself. On the ground, to prevent Luna from returning to the shelter, I shouted for Sophia to be given exactly what she needed. She spoke with her superiors, explained the situation, and, despite her initial resistance, finally agreed. Luna would be given to Sophia as an emotional support dog, with specialized training in childhood PTSD. It was unconventional, but Sophia's story had touched so many people that no one could decide otherwise. The next day, Ramirez showed up at Patricia's house with a 3-year-old golden retriever, a dog with sweet eyes and boundless energy. Sophia was in her room when he arrived. Patricia called me.
"Sophia, come on. Ramirez is here, and I've brought someone special." Sophia went upstairs slowly, her gaze distant and her expression weary. But when she saw Luna, something changed in her face. A sparkle appeared in her eyes. "Who is it?" she asked softly. "Her name is Luna," Ramirez explained. "If you and your mother need it, I'll live here with you. I'm a therapy dog, specifically trained to help people who have been through traumatic experiences. I'll be with you when you have nightmares. I'll be with you when you're scared. I'll remind you that you're safe." Sophia threw herself in front of Luna, and the paw immediately pressed her head against her chest, as if it knew exactly what to do. Sophia began to cry, but this time they weren't tears of pain. They were tears of relief. "Can you really be with me?" she asked, her voice trembling with fear. Patricia, also crying, replied, "Yes, my love, she's yours." Sophia hugged Luna tightly and remained completely still, letting the little girl cling to her and find everything she needed. Ramirez watched the scene with a smile that was both sad and happy. It was like seeing Max again, connecting with someone who desperately needed the unconditional love that only a dog could give. Luna became Sophia's shadow and slept in her bed, holding her tightly. When Sophia had a nightmare, Luna would gently wake her, licking her face and pressing her warm body against Sophia's until her heart calmed. When Sophia had panic attacks, Luna would sit across from her, looking into her eyes, drawing her back to the present, reminding her that she was safe, that she wasn't alone. And it worked. The nightmares didn't disappear completely, but they came back less often. The panic attacks became more manageable. Sophia began to smile more. She slept better. She lived more fully. While Sophia was alone with Luna by her side, her passion for animals grew exponentially. She knew she wanted to be a veterinarian. She wanted to specialize in service and therapy dogs. She wanted to train dogs like Max and Luna, dogs that could save lives and heal broken hearts. She began volunteering at animal shelters on weekends. She helped socialize rescued dogs, especially those who were traumatized, abused, or abandoned. And she discovered she had a calling. The dogs responded to her in a special way. They trusted her quickly. How could they sense that she understood trauma, that she had been in difficult situations and had found a way out? One day, after 6 years working at the shelter, Sophia faced a particularly difficult case. Sombra, a 5-year-old German shepherd rescued from a situation of severe abuse. She had been used to make dog fur, was constantly beaten, and left without food for days at a time. She left the shelter malnourished, covered in scars, and completely traumatized. She growled at anyone who approached her. She wouldn't eat, she wouldn't sleep. The shelter staff were seriously considering euthanasia, as they didn't believe she could recover. Sophia heard this, and something inside her broke. "Give me a chance with him," she pleaded with the shelter director. "Just 1 week. If I don't see any improvement, I'll abide by your decision." The director was an idiot. He was dangerous. Shadow had bitten one of my dogs. But there was something in Sophia's determination, in the conviction in her eyes, that made her relent. 1 week, I finally said, but with constant supervision. If you show the slightest sign of aggression, it's over immediately. Sophia accepted the conditions. For the next 7 days, I spent every free moment at the shelter, sitting in front of Shadow's cage. I didn't try to touch him. I didn't try to force anyone to interact. He just sat there, talking softly, telling his story. The story of the man at the airport, of the fear I felt, of how Max had seen him when she'd never seen him before, of how Luna helped her heal. He promised Shadow that she would do the same for him. For the first 3 days, Shadow didn't respond to anyone. He growled whenever someone passed by. I still didn't eat. But on the 4th day, something changed. Sophia was, as always, sitting in front of the cage, and she started talking. And this time, Shadow was in his growl. I looked up and stared at him. Amazing! And Sophia felt the same connection she had felt with Max years before.
a tacit understanding between two beings who had suffered and were searching for a reason to trust again. "I know," Sophia whispered. "I know it hurts. I know it's hard to believe someone can be good after everything they've been through. But I promise you, Shadow, not all humans are bad. Some of us matter. Some of us want to help you." She slowly reached out toward the cage, not trying to touch it,
just offering her presence. And to everyone's astonishment, Shadow approached. He put his hand between the bars, into the grumping one. Don't back down. He just put his hand in, processing, deciding. On the 5th day, Shadow ate for the first time. Sophia had tricked him with a bland, appetizing meal free of spices. She left it near the cage and remained silent, giving him space. And Shadow, after several minutes of hesitation, approached and ate. It was a small step, but a monumental one. On the 6th day, Shadow allowed Sophia to touch his head through the bars. It was just an instant, a second of contact, but it was enough. The dog isn't lost. He just needs time, patience, and someone to believe in him. On the 7th day, the shelter director was ready to make the final decision. But as I entered the room, I froze. Sophia was inside the cage with Shadow, sitting on the floor, and the dog was lying beside her, his head in her lap. There was no aggression, no fear, only peace. The director felt tears welling in his eyes. "You've performed a miracle," he whispered. Sophia smiled, gently stroking Shadow's ears. "I didn't ask you to. I chose to trust. I simply gave you the space to do it." A few weeks later, Patricia and Sophia officially adopted Sombra. He joined Luna at home, and although he was cautious at first, he adapted quickly. Luna, with her gentleness and patience, helped him understand that this was a safe place. And Sombra, little by little, began to heal. The scars on his body will remain, but those on his soul will not fade. He learned to play again. He learned to trust again. He learned that not all humans wanted to regret things. And Sophia learned something too. I learned something too. I learned that saving Shadow on land was about him. It was about her. It was about transforming your own trauma into a purpose. It was about using your pain to understand the pain of others. It was about honoring Max by doing for Shadow what Max had been for her. A light in the darkness. A reason to keep going. The certainty that love still exists even after the worst cruelty. The years went by. Sophia graduated high school with honors. I was accepted into college on a full scholarship to study veterinary medicine. On her graduation day, Patricia was proud. But I also felt gratitude, because I knew that without Max, without that moment at the airport, her daughter wouldn't be there. She wouldn't be alive, much less pursuing her dreams with such passion and determination. During her first year of university, Sophia started a special project. She wanted to create a program that would connect trauma victims with rescued dogs who had also suffered. The idea was simple yet powerful, to unite vulnerable beings so they could heal together. She wrote the proposal, presented it to her professors, and sought funding. And to her surprise, it was accepted. The university offered resources. Nonprofit organizations expressed interest. 6 months later, the Max program officially opened its doors. The name was Sophia's idea. When asked why she wanted to name it that, her answer was simple. Because Max taught me that saving a life can change the world, and I want others to experience that same miracle. The program starts small. 5 rescued dogs and 5 people recovering from trauma. But the results were astonishing. The participants reported significant reductions in PTSD symptoms. The dogs, for their part, became more confident, more sociable, and happier. It was exactly what Sophia had envisioned: mutual healing. Ramirez was invited to the program's official launch. Now retired from professional work, but involved as a dog training consultant, he left with his eyes shining with emotion.
Seeing the program's logo, the profile of a German Shepherd with the words Max Program underneath, I had to hold back tears. "You would be so proud," I told Sophia. "Max would be incredibly proud of you." Sophia hugged him tightly.
I owe everything to him. Every life we saved with this program, every heart we healed, you showed me the way. The Max program grew rapidly. In the second year, there were 20 dogs and 20 participants. In the third year, there were 50. They began to receive national attention. The media picked up the story. Documentaries were made. And always, in every interview, every article, every video, Max's name was present. His story was told again and again, inspiring millions of people, and reminding them that a single act of courage, a single moment of decision, could create an impact that would last for decades. When Sophia was 25 and about to graduate from college, she received an unexpected call. It was from the office of the President of Mexico. They wanted to honor her with a national award for her work with the Max program and for being a voice for victims of child abuse. Sophia couldn't believe what she was hearing. She, a young woman who had been terrified and shaken at an airport, was now receiving recognition from the leader of her country. It was surreal. The ceremony took place at the National Palace before hundreds of people. Sophia went up on stage with Luna by her side, as her therapy dog was now also her certified service dog, who accompanied her everywhere. The president spoke of her courage, her resilience, how she had transformed a devastating experience into hope for others. But when it was Sophia's turn to speak, I didn't talk about her. I talked about Max. "I'm not the hero of this story," he began, his voice clear and firm. "The hero was a dog who refused to ignore a little girl's suffering. The hero was an animal who saw what humans couldn't see. The hero was Max." He paused, his gaze sweeping over the audience. "And I also want to talk about all the dogs like Max who work every day to protect us. Police dogs, search and rescue dogs, therapy dogs. They don't ask for recognition. They don't ask for medals. They only ask for love and the opportunity to serve. And we, as a society, owe them everything." The audience erupted in applause. Several officers from the canine unit stood, moved to finally see their dog's dedication publicly recognized. And Ramirez, sitting in the audience with tears in his eyes, felt a circle close. Max had saved Sophia. Sophia had healed. Now Sophia was saving others, both human and animal. Max's legacy lives on and grows stronger every day. After the ceremony, Sophia was interviewed by the journalism professors. They all wanted to know, how did you do it? How did you go from being a traumatized victim to a leader in your field? And your answer was always the same. Just one person. Thanks to my mother, who never laughed at me. Thanks to Ramirez, who trusted his dog. Thanks to Max, who saw me when I was invisible. Thanks to Luna, who helped me heal. Thanks to Sombra, who taught me that we all deserve a second chance. It's not the story of one strong person. It's the story of a community, of love, of extraordinary animals that make us better people. Her words resonated deeply. The video of her speech went viral, racking up millions of views in just a few days. Comments poured in from all over the world, sharing similar stories of how a dog had changed their lives, how an animal had saved them in their darkest moments. Sophia read every comment, responding to as many as she could, creating a global community of people united by their love and respect for these extraordinary animals. But amidst all this success and recognition, Sophia never forgot her roots. Every year, on the anniversary of the day she was rescued, she visited Max's grave with Luna and Sombra. She would sit under the tree, which was now strong and tall, and talk to Max as if he were still there. She would tell him about the program, about the lives saved, about the rehabilitated dogs, about her work. And she always ended the same way. "Thank you, my friend. Thank you for not abandoning me.
Thank you for showing me that there is light even in the darkness. I will love you forever." As she sat there with her dogs by her side, Sophia felt a profound peace. I felt that my life had a purpose. I felt that all the pain, all the fear, all the suffering I had experienced had not been in vain. It had been the beginning of something bigger. It had been the beginning of a movement that now helps scientists study people and animals. And that seed had been planted by a four-legged dog with a heart the size of the universe. The MAX program continued to expand. 5 years after its founding, it already had locations in 8 Mexican states. More than 3 dogs were rescued and rehabilitated. It helped more than 3 people recover from various traumas. The numbers were impressive, but for Sophia, each one represented a story. It was a person who could now sleep without nightmares. It was a dog who could now trust new people. It was a life transformed. While it was all happening, Patricia watched her daughter with awe and boundless love. The little girl who had been broken, the little girl who had been taken from her, the little girl who had experienced the worst terror imaginable, was now a strong and compassionate woman, dedicated to making the world a better place. It was more than Patricia Hubier could ever have dreamed of. And every night, before falling asleep, she whispers a prayer of gratitude. Gratitude to Max, to Ramirez, to Luna, to everyone who was part of her daughter's healing journey. Ramirez, now in his 60s, had found a new passion in retirement, writing. He was working on a book about his career in the police force. But the longest, most detailed, and most moving chapter was the one about Max and Sophia. I wrote about that day at the airport with perfect clarity, remembering every detail, every moment, every sign Max had given. And I wrote about the following years, about how the decision to trust my dog had set everything in motion. The book was published 2 years later under the title Max's Last Goodbye, a true story of instinct, courage, and redemption. It became an immediate bestseller. All proceeds were donated to the MAX program, ensuring its continuation for many years to come. In the book's dedication, Ramirez wrote, "To Max, my partner, my friend, my hero, and to Sophia, who took the gift of life and multiplied it 1,000-fold. You taught me the true heroism lies not in strength, but in compassion, not in power, but in empathy, not in the loudest voice, but in the biggest heart." Sophia received the book with tears of gratitude and joy. I read it from cover to cover in a single night, reliving those painful yet transformative moments. When I finished, I knew what I had to do. I had to make sure Max's story reached every school, every library, every home in Mexico. Because it was more than just the story of a brave dog. It was a story about seeing the invisible, about listening to the silence, about never giving up on those who seem broken, because within every broken soul there is a light waiting to be reborn. And yet, Max's legacy continues to grow. His story was included in the school curriculum as an example of animal heroism and teamwork between humans and dogs. Statues of Max were erected at the airport where he worked and at the entrance of the first Max program shelter. Every year, the day of his death became National Heroic Dog Day, honoring all dogs who have served the country. It was just what Max deserved, to be remembered, to be honored, to be loved forever. And amidst all of this, the essential truth remained intact. A little girl emitted a silent signal at an airport. Only a police dog understood her. And that simple act of seeing, of refusing to ignore, of trusting pure instinct, changed everything. A little girl's fate changed. It changed the lives of canine and human scientists. The way society treats service animals changed. And the world changed. A heart was healed once, a life was saved once, an act of unconditional love once. Because, in the end, this is what Max taught, that love has no limits, that compassion knows no boundaries, and that sometimes, just sometimes, true angels come with 4 legs, a wet halo, and a soul that shines brighter than any human light could ever extinguish.